But the two things I only know for sure in this world is that change will happen whether you like it or not. And two, not only do you have to know yourself, but you have to use that to function in this world. And that is a messy, messy world.
Becca Hopson is one of my dear friends. I'm so excited to have you on the show today, Becca. So welcome.
Hi, it's so lovely to be here. You are a friend of mine, and I'm so delighted to talk with you and your listeners.
Yes, and moms, if you're listening out there, anyone who's listening to this podcast, you're going to be able to get some great takeaways because I believe we all have been in places in our lives when we were craving change, but we didn't know how to do it. So stay tuned because we're going to get into some of Becca's awesome practical tools, which were created by her own purpose-driven ideas. But before we dive into that, I think I would like for you to just tell us a little bit more about your background, a little bit about your journey before we dive in.
Yeah, great question. I always think about this question often. Is it the long version or the short version? And how to do that. So just to kind of start off with the hat and the role that we're talking about, I'm a life coach. I work with women to create change, specifically when they have an inner urge to create something new or different in their life. My journey in terms of how I got there, because of the listeners might be predominantly mothers, I think it's important to kind of start right before I became a mother. I was in the wellness business. So almost my child is turning 17. I have a 17-year-old, almost 17-year-old kiddo. And before I had him, I was working in the wellness world and I was a performance artist. I went to school for sculpture, movement-based performance work, and went to Chicago to live the dream. And I was doing all sorts of wellness practices, alternative therapies to both nourish and nurture my body, but also for stress management tools. And I went to massage therapy school. I was getting acupuncture, massage, going to spas, all sorts of fabulous stuff, but almost as a way to take care of my body, because I was in the studio working with my body. I was doing puppetry work, stilt walking work, fire spinning work, but I was also doing intensive organic movement and toe work. So self-care was almost like a necessary tool for my work at the time. But then I learned that it was it was also something really good for me to get into as a performance artist. And then shortly after that, I had a kiddo, and my whole world was rocked.
Yes, as most mothers listening out there, we all get that. We all get that. Yeah, it does really change things, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. So fast forward, I have, again, I was a business owner before he was born. So this year or next year actually marks my 20th year as being an entrepreneur in the wellness world. But now I own multiple wellness businesses. Since I've had a kid, I've gone back to school, have a master's degree. Since I've had a child, I don't go up to the spa as often as I used to. But I still do consider myself a creative, an artist, and predominantly I focus on women creating change because of how much change that I had to live through way before being a mom, but more importantly, how to continue to navigate self-care and my own goals and my own passions and living a new dream, so to speak, since him, which all boils down to how I navigated change and how I continue to have to learn how to bet on myself.
Yeah, I love that. I love this. And I've been excited about having this conversation because of, mother guides, and anybody really who's a parent can really, I'm guessing they have a similar story, right? We all change once we have children. we all have to adapt and try to figure out how to balance our lives. And I talk about this a lot too, and you know this, Becca, is when you're craving change, when you know, first of all, it changes, then we crave change. Like, how do we create balance in our lives where, because, you know, as moms, we put our kids first. It's just, we're nurturers. It's just how things work. So yeah, so we tend to put ourselves somewhere on the back burner, and how to live a life that feels more like, you know, you're also serving yourself. You're creating a life that feels really good and balanced and happy. And that's tough. As you know, I coach moms on that have kids that are on the autistic spectrum, and finding that balance is really tough. So I'm really excited for you to discuss some of your what your purpose-driven ideas are. And then I know you've got some really nice practical tools for our listeners to apply to themselves. So I'm really pumped about it. So why don't you tell us about what you mean, for anyone who hasn't done work like this, what you mean by purpose-driven ideas?
Yeah, so I tend to say purpose-driven a lot, actually, and you pointed that out to me. I don't know if I even know that about myself in terms of my copy, as a, you know, a brand, so to speak. But it's similar to this idea of one of my businesses is called Inner Balance, and I notice how it is mirrored throughout my life, right? So this idea of purpose-driven is really centered around the individual. So I work directly with one-on-one people, with one-on-one women. And even in my group settings, the work that we do is based on the individual. And I truly believe that every person is unique. Every person brings their own story, their own experience, the way that they show up in the world. And that we forget sometimes, if we're looking externally, how small that feels and how sometimes alone that feels. But I actually think it's beautiful. I think it's very similar to the body. Like, as a performance artist or a massage therapist, I think it's what makes us authentic to ourselves is one of the most beautiful, purpose-driven things that we can actually bring to any table. You know, how that looks as a mother, and how that looks as a worker or an employee or a business owner, or how that looks in the world of advocating for social impact or change, or even just abilities and rights. That is, I think that the piece that all my work is really centered around is the actual individual, and knowing your individual self as a way to find purpose. So that's what I mean by purpose-driven. So we drive forward, we feel momentum, we make change, we create passion or fuel based on the purpose from within. So it looks different for everyone, which is one of the best things about not just my job, but one of the best things about in talking with people and individuals. I find people fascinating because I believe that. So it shows up everywhere that I go, and there's another person, or I'm working on myself.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. So yeah, so for those of you that are listening that really haven't heard that term before, I think that makes a lot of sense. At least it does to me. And, you know, as I coach women, moms, I can see exactly what you're saying with that idea, because we do all have purpose, and we do all want to move forward, and we do all want to create, and we are all individuals. And then how to put that into a practice, a tool, is what is going to be so fascinating for us today, because I would love for you to share what those tools look like? What do you mean by practical tools?
Yeah. You and I talk about this a lot, right? And
Yes.
so I'll try to fill people in because they can't, read our brains or weren't in our previous conversations that we have together. But so I think, if so part of me, I studied sociology and medical humanities. Later, I studied business and economics, so I focused on change theory, change leadership, and then I also um, realized how the education world was so focused on men being leaders and men talking about leadership, lifestyle, change, and I had a hard time as a mother studying and as somebody who was juggling so many things in life because I'm a multi-passionate human being. I had a hard time reading words from people that I didn't feel like understood me.
Mm-hmm.
And this, one of the best, and she went to Harvard, one of the people that I discovered on my own was a change leader within the business and economics program somewhere else, and then became a life coach. Her PhD in sociology is Martha Beck. So I found Martha Beck. But before I found Martha Beck, some of the radical lifestyle, radical leadership, radical change theories were all these dudes from Harvard that were talking about really focused on just going to your authentic. No, they didn't use the word authentic, but essentially it was this idea of know who you are, right?
Mm-hmm.
Know what you want to do and stay in that lane in terms of your goal, but then nurture those things around you. I'm beckonizing the language here. But I think that, to your point in terms of philosophical and practical, and getting into the purpose-driven sort of focus, plan, ideas, momentum, the core of it is all just knowing who you are and want to be, right? So part of a practical tool, and this sounds extremely simple, but it's uber radical. It's listening to yourself. It's really listening to yourself, because we're so focused on the exterior world, the to-dos, the expectations, the way that we should eat, the way that we should dress, which can all be fun. But really, it's important to know how you want to show up and who you are to navigate the external world. So one of the most important practical tools is just this idea of learning how to listen to yourself. Now, that said, most of the people that I work with have already done that listening because they know that they want change, right? Because listening can be hard. And you know this because this is what you do extremely well in terms of working with people. It's like, I'm noticing these things, or I'm feeling stuck, or I'm feeling angry, like that's the time that sometimes you need somebody to help you learn how to listen to yourself. But truly, it's about going inside and trying to find what you're craving in terms of who you are and who you want to become. And that in itself is a radical, simple, practical tool that is both how to manage you and how you show up in the world, but then also how to feel confident with who you are today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. I love that. I do that with listening to yourself talk. How do you speak to yourself? What are you saying? What is most important to you in your daily life? And I think that practical tool is the bomb, because you're absolutely right. Once you can start listening to yourself, you can identify. And I always see the ahas turning on when folks start to listen to themselves. It's just amazing. It's just like, wait, what? Whoa, I didn't even know that I did that, right? I had no idea how to listen to myself. And then once you start listening to yourself, what you're actually what actually is going on within. That's gold right there. That is
Yeah.
gold.
Yeah. And I think that once you're able to listen to yourself, and then share it,
Mm-hmm.
then that is an awesome radical change already. And that's usually where, my clients kind of come in terms of, because I work with people who already know they want to create change. They've already they have this inner urge that they want to
Mm-hmm.
create change. And then they're like, hey, Becca, let's talk, right?
Yeah.
But then you still continue to work on listening to yourself. As you and I do this together, we work together on this, is like, it's not a one and done thing.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
So listening to yourself is like one of the most practical tools. And really taking that a step further is really identifying what you're craving, like what you're wanting, what you are dreaming, and what you are feeling joy for, that only speaks to you from within. It may surface throughout the body, like, smiles or warmth or goosebumps. But those are triggers in my mind that are telling you that you are listening. You are listening to your thoughts. You are listening to your body, and you are aligning. And that becomes the purpose in terms of purpose-driven ideas.
Yeah, I love that. Why do you feel like our listeners learning that, and then applying it to their lives, to our lives, is crucial? Like, what is the gold in your mind? Why is this so important? I know it's going to create change. It starts the party, so to speak, is what I'm hearing. But is there anything you want to add to that?
Starts the party, the inner party, the
Yeah,
dance
the inner
party.
party.
Yeah, this is a good question. And I think that I'm going to answer it probably in at least two different ways. I think what's important about it is twofold. One, we're human beings. We have thoughts, we have feelings, we have a body, and how we walk and function on this earth is one way that we show up in life, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's that. So even though you know your purpose, you know your authentic self, you still have to deal with the messy world. And that is the biggest sort of first point of this, I think, for these listeners as mothers, especially mothers in the world of advocating for a kiddo, and especially for advocating for abilities, when people are looking at disabilities only and difference, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when you're advocating for your kids' abilities to show up in the system, to show up in life, to be independent human beings, and people are only looking at the differences, then you're advocating on multiple levels for your child, but then you're also reflecting within, what does this mean to you as a mother, and how is that making you feel, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's just this balance of purpose-driven and external world and how you function. But the second piece to this that is uber important in terms of, to this audience, is the only thing that we know for sure is change. Like, that's the only thing we know for sure. Whether or not we can control that change is this kind of like flexible thought. And that I like to have conversations with women, right? How are you trying to control the change? Or how are you honoring yourself and how you want to show up, right? But the two things I only know for sure in this world is that change will happen whether you like it or not. And two, not only do you have to know yourself, but you have to use that to function in this world. And that is a messy, messy world.
It
and a beautiful one.
is. Yeah. I agree. There are some people who fear change and some people who are ready for change. And when you add the term radical change, when our listeners are thinking of, okay, yeah, change. So am I fear-based with the change? Am I ready to change? Maybe I don't even know what I think. I have worked with some moms who, when I ask them some questions, they're great until we get to talking about what they want, what they're dreaming of, what their hopes and they're blank because they just don't even know where to begin. So I love this concept of practical ways to create radical change. Can you talk about what that means?
Yeah. Yeah. And when I say practical ways to create radical change is any change.
Uh,
So change
gotcha.
is radical.
Mm-hmm.
So you could almost switch it and say radical tools to create change or to manage change.
Right,
Like,
right.
so I think it's really important for all of us to know that change is radical anyway. But when you do or make fundamental shifts in terms of thinking about the nature of, the world that you live in or within yourself, that's what I'm talking about in terms of radical. So
Mm-hmm.
it can be a radical shift or change, but more importantly, you can use a radical tool to create really small change because that's still uber important.
Mm-hmm.
I think the thing that is really some examples that I think are really helpful when thinking about tools for radical change or radical tools for awesome change
Yes.
is this idea of slowing down, right?
Mm.
So, when you talk about, trying to wrap your brain around something that feels like too much, right? Or like you said, the fear of the future, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you have the fear of the future or the regret of the past, which are two major, major saboteurs
Yes.
that also create a sense of urgency for change,
Mm.
right? One of the most radical tools that I believe that you can practice is slowing down. And I call it hitting reset.
Mm-hmm.
So that idea of coming to the present moment. So if you are fearing the future or regretting the past, you're not in the present moment. And also your brain likes to stay in fight, flight, or freeze when you're fearing the future or regretting the past. And if you are running from a bear, freezing so that you can hide from something you're fearing, or fighting, that's a lot of energy that may or may not be needed if you're not in survival mode.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's perfect. And I agree with you. Any change is radical. Um, and some of us deal better with change than others. And to take action, let's talk about that, because once you discover what it is that you're craving and the change that you do want to make, and you think, okay, I really want a career change or whatever change you would like to use as an example, how do we get past what's getting in the way of taking action? How do we do that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I, you know, Going back to that radical tool called reset.
Mm-hmm.
So if you know what you already want to do and you want to create some change, so you're kind of in my my ideal client stage, so to speak, right? We're still active listening. We're still sharing our skills, and then when we know that there's a block or something that's getting in the way of the change or what we want to create, we often start in survival mode, right? We want to fight it. We want to freeze. We want to avoid it. People are really good at avoiding. Oh, there's a deadline. Oh, I think I'm just going to drink my tea and read this book right now, right?
Yeah.
Or we want to push through as a fight. And then, I just, those are just some examples of the survival brain kind of kicking in about a change reaction or trying to not get past change. So one of the ways that I practice reset with my clients is just really asking them to have a large array of ways that they can hit reset and ways that they can really come to the present moment, get rid of the fear, get rid of the regret, and come right here and notice that your body's breathing, right? You possibly can see things if you're a sighted person. You possibly can hear things if you're hearing, right? You can use your voice, possibly, right? You can use your smell. You can use a sense of touch. And just to get back into the part of the brain that is the rational brain, right? The present moment. I love just getting outside, getting out of walls if possible. But if you have to stay in walls, I love just using breath. I love just using the idea of heart rate, right? But generally, some of the people that I work with are like talking about deadlines, talking about time, talking about energy. I don't have any time for this. What I find is that one of the first questions that I ask my clients is, did you eat something? Because, like, for example, I have a client who's about to go through a big divorce and a big shift and is worried about what that looks like. And so one of the things, because she was speaking so quickly and she was just so fearful of the future, I was like, I listened. I made sure I heard what she said. I was like, let me make sure that I'm hearing you correctly. Is this what you're saying? Yes. All right. Have you eaten today? Nope. She hadn't. Have you drank any water today? No. Okay, well, I'm going to stay in this meeting with you and make a cup of tea. Would you like to make something for yourself while we talk about next steps, right? Because it's hard to kind of come up with a purpose-driven plan if you are still running or fearing, right? Or regretting. So it's a little bit of a balance. It's learning how to manage and staying in the present moment before you take action. Because when you have a tight grip, you're really usually focused on outcomes. You really, really want outcomes, and you're willing to do whatever you want for those outcomes. And sometimes outcomes just, we over or underestimate them, and we're not ready for what we're learning in the moment. So it's about, what are you learning? Who are you? Who are you becoming? What are you learning in this present moment? And that's when you get some really good information. But that said, I want to back up for a second, because you talked about my ideal clients. And I think that with your listeners, some of them may not know the change they want to create, right?
Right.
And so you and I talk about this a lot. And I think one of the things, I call it inner urge, like when you know that you want to have change, it's like an inner urge or inner wisdom, right? That's calling, right? But if you don't know what that calling is, or that passion or that dream is yet, then sometimes it's about staying in where you don't know to find the polarity of what you do want, right? So if I don't know what I want for change, and you're really good at this, like, okay, you don't know, we still need to get you in the present moment. We still need to slow down, come to this moment, and start to understand what we do know, even if we don't know what we want, right? And I think that that's really important to talk about, because as mothers, when we take care of everybody else, we steal from ourselves. And it's easy to get lost. It's easy to lose yourself. And when you lose yourself, it's a lot of just behaviors over time that we put ourselves last, or we didn't give ourselves the sleep. We didn't give ourselves the food. We didn't give ourselves, let alone the weekly massage that some people get, right? So all of those, whether you're a hater of those people that get weekly massages or a lover of them, it doesn't matter. It's more about, what are you thirsting for, or what do you wish that you could drink, right?
Right.
So if you don't know what you want to drink, let's focus on what have you drank, and let's see if we can play around with the different things that you put in your glass or your vessel, or even what vessel it is first, to then discover what you want to become. So if you don't know what you want to become, that's okay. It's also part, I think, of becoming a mom. Like the person I've wanted to become as a mom has changed a million times. And one of the things that I had to do as a mom is kill off the old Becca. I had to grieve the old Becca, long ago. And I wasn't a performance-based artist who had a studio that was training with my body for hours every day. And that was heartbreaking. And I didn't know who I wanted to become, right? And so I think even if you don't know what change you want to make, I think there's still a lot to be said about the power of reset and really coming to the present moment to figure out your next move and start to love yourself again.
I love that. I love all of that. I think one of the big things that I see, having worked with moms too, is how do you get them to hit the reset button? It's like I talk to so many moms, and it's usually a time factor or, finances. They just don't feel like them investing in themselves, that there's that guilt that comes up in all of us. Like, I should be, putting this money towards, let's say, therapy or groceries, the way the economy is right now. And getting a mom to hit the reset button to say, yes, I am worth this investment, because if I hit it and I do invest in myself, then I also am investing in my child. So that is a radical change, I would guess, to be able to hit that reset button and to invest in yourself and put yourself first and put the oxygen mask on first. So if we can get them to hit that button, now we're really moving, right? So what are your thoughts on that, on how to get someone to invest in themselves?
Well, there are different ways to invest. And if you think about money in general, do you take your money and invest in what, right?
Yeah.
Usually there's some exchange, whether you're investing in maybe a property, maybe you're investing in just rent, a roof over your head, right? Maybe you're investing in food. So if you get those bare essentials, that's you're already deciding to invest in yourself. I would say that when you want an independent, resourceful human being that is your child, right? If that is one of your goals, then what I would invite you to consider is, how are you showing up as an independent, resourceful human being as a model? And that's one question that I have for people. I'm part of the Indiana Blind Children's Foundation, which is the foundation of the School for Visually Impaired and Blind kiddos in Indiana. And one of the missions that we have at that foundation is to really allow for all children, visually impaired and blind, to be independent, resourceful human beings. Like, that is our goal. Our goal is not to fix them. Our goal is to resource them, to invest in them, right? And when I'm around, not just that program, when I'm just showing up in life, I think I see ways that people invest to resource themselves, right? I also see how people resource and invest in their kids, whether it's education, whether it's shoes on their feet, whether it's a birthday party, whatever it is. Like, you can keep growing it, right? So it's not just luxury. It can be beyond survival too. It can be comfortable. But what I would say to especially mothers is that where else would you like to invest your money? Like, where's if you were to bet on anything, if you were to put your money on anything, what's going to give you 100% guarantee that you're going to invest on something that's going to give you the value and the worth that you want from that investment, whether it's $1, whether it's thousands of dollars. And I can tell you, and we all know this, that the school of life is one of the biggest investments. So if you continue to show up in life and experience this world and learn how to navigate it, then you yourself are probably the best investment that you can do. And if you don't believe that's true, I would love to talk to you. Actually, I'm sure Bridget would love to talk to you, because the value of, if you think that you can invest in something or someone else besides yourself, I don't understand how you can be confident with that sort of change. I can't. Even if you were to invest in the stock market, right? You can take more risk, but there's a low confidence, right? You can do less risk where it's high confidence, but really you're just sending it out. You don't even know what's going to happen with that money. But if I invest in myself, then I know the type of person I am. I know how I'm going to show up. I know how much work I can do. I know how much rest I need. I know how much play I need. And I can guarantee myself the person that I am, right? So
Yes.
I would say that, there are different levels of investment. Reset is not just an investment of betting on yourself. Reset is about coming to a moment of being present, right? Investing is the change that you're like, I'm ready to make this change, and I'm ready to bet on myself to see what change I can create. And so that's an action, and that's a purpose-driven action right there.
I love it. I love it. Yes. Yes. Everything that you just said, Becca. And I would say, if you are a person that, if you don't think you're worthy or whatever, what you said earlier, to talk to me, I say talk to Becca, talk to anybody to help yourself feel more joy in your life. Because I can sit here all day long and say, I really believe you need to hit the reset. I believe you need to do your inner work so that you can show up differently in the world. And, because once a mother guide, always a mother guide. I say that all the time.
Yeah.
So it's not like, this is going to last a month or whatever. We're on this journey. Like you said, we're in the school of life, and to really absorb that concept. So if you're listening to this interview, Becca and I are both very passionate about helping anyone, but in particularly women, to empower themselves and to create the life that they do want to live, because you absolutely are enough. You absolutely are worth it. And yes.
And investing in yourself is probably the highest likely in terms of return, if you know yourself well and you want to invest in yourself.
Wow. I hope you want to say that in a nutshell one more time, because I think that is very powerful.
If you invest in yourself because you're ready for that change, it's the best investment possible.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. And you will, without a doubt, radical change for good. So much work to be done, And I've been doing this inner work for years now. As I said, unfortunately, I didn't get into the inner work until I was, in my late 40s, 50s, really. And if I could go back, and you and I have talked about this too, Becca, to my 32-year-old self, I'd say, what are you thinking? come on, you're worth it. You are enough. Let's do this. And I am sure that is something that I could have changed, but that's the past. Letting go of that. And I am in the present moment. And I love this discussion because I believe that it's going to make a difference. Somebody's going to hear this discussion and they're going to reach out to someone, whether it's you or me or whomever.
Yeah. And, I think the important thing is it doesn't have to be a life coach. I mean, especially if it's really about self-worth. As you know, you and I, we're good at, if, we work with healthy brains, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so anytime it's self-worth that continues to get in the way, that tends to be more of a mental health support system, right?
Right.
But I think the thing that is really important is you're never too old or too young to start doing this work. And really, a lot of people do this work to not just like, they say live your best life, right? Which I kind of shake my head when I say it, but it's really just seeing life differently, because we have to unlearn a lot of social programming that doesn't serve us in order to show up with a lot of self-love and compassion to advocate for ourselves and our families.
Yes.
So I think that you're never too old. All of the wisdom that you had before you start doing this work is only going to help you. And the more that you start listening and become self-aware, it's a beautiful thing. You start to really enjoy your own fabric in this new way.
I love that. So would you put your phrase uncomfortable truths that you mention a lot in your coursework, and can you talk about what are the uncomfortable truths?
Yes. So I like this idea of uncomfortable truths for a couple of reasons. One is I like to normalize the discomfort so that we feel comfortable talking about discomfort, right?
Yeah.
Because life is hard, change is really hard. And we, as amazing women, can do hard things. Most of us, especially your listeners, know that they can do hard things.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So one of the uncomfortable truths in any purpose-driven, authentic, knowing yourself work, any radical change, is that oddly, self-development, self-care is really hard to do alone. That's one of the uncomfortable truths that I think is something that we know, and we have to figure out how to navigate, right? In order to really do self-care. You can do it alone, but oddly, it's really hard to do by yourself, right?
Yes.
And then I think another uncomfortable truth that is just something for us to know is that how to normalize your life and how to navigate the exterior world is messy. So the world is messy. You're going to get into, like, what do you say a lot? Bridget, you talk about like you're in the forest and you have a path, and then you're in the forest and you're lost, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So this idea of sometimes even when you know yourself and you're moving forward, right? The world is messy. You're going to find those boulders that are really tricky to know what to do with. So one of the uncomfortable truths is that even though when you know your path, it's still going to be sometimes hard. Your journey is going to be complex. So I like to say, my primary care physician says this to me all the time: think like water, right? Take the path of least resistance when you know yourself. go under, go over, go on, go around, but flow without a whole lot of resistance, right?
Mm-hmm.
So those are
Yeah.
the two uncomfortable truths when it comes to self-development, when it comes to really listening to yourself and knowing how you want to move forward and creating change.
Yeah, that's powerful, because I do believe the uncomfortable truths are kind of like the breadcrumbs to get back on track, right? Because I talk about, when you're in the deep, dark forest and you don't know which direction to go, you don't have a compass, you don't know to go to what you resist the least, perhaps the uncomfortable truths. How do
Yeah.
I find my way? What is the first step I take? And just a lot of times just taking a step that doesn't feel too big
Again,
and scary. You just take it. You just take it. Yeah.
I take new steps. I just started getting back into working out again. And it is the hardest step to get back into for me. And I was so
Yeah.
disappointed in myself, but I was just happy that I took the step. But a uncomfortable truth that I think is really good for these listeners is that just going back to doing this alone is hard.
Yes.
Accountability is key.
Mm-hmm.
Finding the right life coach, accountability buddy, partners, group of people that can listen to you, can ask you questions to move you forward, which is key, not hold you back, and to celebrate you along the way, because you're gonna have some self-talk in there on occasion that surfaces that you're gonna also have to really combat with and advocate for yourself. So I think that accountability is key, and I think that that's why people come to us. I think people come to us because we are accountability systems, people, tools. We're trained to do it. We're trained to ask great questions. We're trained to move you forward, right?
Yes.
We're trained to help strategize if you're stuck, right? We're trained to listen deeply and parrot or reframe, and also ask good questions so that you see lots of different paths in the forest. So I would say that, even if you don't get a life coach, get somebody who can move you forward and celebrate you and listen to you, and not hold you back.
Yeah, that's I completely agree. If it's not us, find some support somewhere, because like you said earlier, it's really hard to do things by yourself. You can do them, but to have that support around you, and like you're saying, accountability, find somebody to help you get on the path that you're craving, but you don't know how to get on it. I love that.
And to feel just less pressure.
Yeah.
Overall, right?
Oh, yeah, I feel that. Like,
way less pressure when you have somebody else.
Yeah, shackles off,
Yeah.
Find ways to feel shackles off rather than shackles on, for sure.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah.
Shackles off.
That's
I feel like I've heard you say that motto.
Yeah, Martha Beck. That's one of the first tools that I learned, that I thought, oh, it's really not that hard to make a decision. I'm just going to make decisions based on, does this feel shackles on, or does this decision feel shackles off? And when you make decisions based on shackles off, it's just like, oh, you can breathe so much easier. And then you just start there, take that first step there with that decision of shackles off. And Don't even get me started about crushing your crazy monkeys of fear, because that's another whole episode.
I'll get you started. Let me
Don't
know
you
when you
get me
want me to get.
started.
Let me know when you want me to get you started.
Okay. I love this conversation. I knew when you were coming on that this was going to be powerful and helpful to anybody who was listening. I want to ask you, is there anything else that you want to mention before we go?
Yeah, I knew you were going to ask this question.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the thing that's really important is know the conditions that you thrive in.
Yeah.
And begin to reorganize how you show up in life so that those conditions are closer to you. And what I mean by that is, you know this about me. Like, I believe I'm a dandelion. I believe I can grow through the cracks. You will find me in concrete areas, highways, and even in your yard that have been sprayed by chemicals potentially, right? But that doesn't mean that I want to stay a dandelion, or that I'm a dandelion in its next phase, so to speak. I don't want to have to fight through the cracks all the time, right? I do want to find potentially a yard that's not using chemicals, that has a kiddo that wants to pluck me out and wear them in their hair, so to speak, right? So I'm using that as a way to just say that, know the conditions that you thrive in, that balance you out and bring you some support, but also that bring you a lot of breath to flow like water. And it's beyond your, it's definitely your survival kit, the things that you need, but it's more comfortable than that. And I would say if you can get to that more comfortable and even luxurious level of your conditions that you want, those small conditions will help bring the biggest change to your life. And I mean, one simple thing that I do in really hard times, especially hard conversations, is I usually give myself a cup of comfort, and I choose my mug and I put some hot tea or some coffee in there, and I make sure it's right next to me and I can touch it, I can hold it. It's there for me. It has my back. It feels like my anchor.
Yes.
And that condition helps me do hard things that I believe are going to move me forward because of the purpose-driven work that I believe that I'm here to do. And so just know your conditions and really invite those. This is luxurious to me because it's a French press cup of coffee in a handmade mug, right? But if I had to, I would pull out any mug. If I was in wherever, I was just in New York and I pulled out a mug and it said hazard on it. And I was like, wow, I'm drinking coffee out of a mug that says hazard. And it was lovely, right? So just really invite ways that bring the conditions so that you feel grounded as your authentic self, and allowing you to do the work that you're really feeling like you're here to do.
Beautiful. I love that. So simple, but so powerful.
Radical.
Yes. Yeah. No, really, that if you haven't tried it, try it, because it really does. It does shift. It helps shift where you're at, and it does provide comfort. I love that. So where can people find you?
People can find me on my website, which is Becca Hopson with a P, like Paula. So Becca, BECCAHOPSON.com. And what's great about my website is I have this fabulous tool that's on there now. So you should go there soon. It's called Inner Wisdom, and it's this inspirational guide that has courageous women sharing how they took action toward the change that they wanted to do, and they made a turnaround. And Bridget, you are in it. So I have some stories of some awesome women, including Bridget. And then I also have this inner wisdom guide so that you can connect with your inner urge.
Mhm.
Some really simple ways of how to listen to it, how to connect with it, and how to think about that as purpose-driven work. So that inspirational guide is free. It looks like a lovely magazine. I feel like an artist when I created that, by the way, with all of it was like a collaboration with some of my amazing clients. So you get to see their beautiful faces and hear what they shared, which is it's it's pretty powerful, just the fact that they shared what they shared. So
Mhm.
I would say my website would be an easy way to find me.
I love that. And it sounds like there's some great tools and inspiration on it as well. So we will, as we release this, we'll make sure that everybody sees your website because we want folks to go get that really, really awesome inspirational information. Because I do think it's hearing other people's stories and that in itself inspires. So we will definitely make sure that you all get that information of where to find Becca. If you all enjoyed this episode, would you please subscribe and like our YouTube channel, Mother's Guide Through Autism? And we really appreciate that because the goal here is to spread all the hope, inspiration, and knowledge that we can to help all mother guides and to help anybody that's on the autism journey. I will see you in the next episode. Stay well and stay safe.